Suzanne Morphew in 2020, 49-year-old Suzanne Morphew, her husband Barry Morphew, and their two daughters, Macy and Mallory, resided in Colorado. Suzanne rode her bike near Maysville, Colorado, on May 10th. Her neighbor reported her missing to the police when she failed to return home. Her bike was the only item discovered in the forested region where Suzanne had gone bicycling, but she was nowhere to be seen. Shortly after her disappearance on May 17th, Barry made a heartfelt plea on Facebook, promising to do everything it takes to get her back. "Oh, Suzanne, please, if someone hears this and knows that you are out there, let us know and we will do everything in our power to get you back. Your girls need you and we love and miss you." Not a single question was raised. "I'll do whatever it takes to get you back, no matter how much they demand it. I adore you, honey. I really want you back." The investigation was worked on by more than 70 investigators from several agencies. They followed up on over 1,400 tips, conducted over 400 interviews, and executed 135 search warrants. He was also charged with tampering with evidence and attempting to influence a public official, even though the case had gone cold at one time. Barry is being held without bond at the Chaffee County Detention Facility. Though her body has not yet been located, Chaffee County Sheriff Jones Beasley claims they have sufficient evidence that Barry killed his wife. Unfortunately, authorities are unable to provide a reason for Barry's crime or explain what led them to charge him. Johns said, "Today is not a day to celebrate, nor does it signal the conclusion of this investigation. Instead, it's the next phase of our extremely challenging but crucial quest for justice for Suzanne and her family." He expressed gratitude to Linda Stanley, the 11th Judicial District Attorney, the FBI, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for their contributions to cracking the case. Suzanne's sister expressed her gratitude to the police and thanked them. "For my sister, justice is finally starting today. It has been a journey no one ever thought they would undertake. We do know, for example, that on the day his wife vanished, Barry was staying at a hotel in Broomfield, Colorado. He smelled of chlorine and was drenched from damp towels when he mysteriously exited the room. Barry made nearly $1 million when he sold the house he shared with Suzanne. He purchased a 2-acre property in Salida, Colorado, a few weeks after Suzanne vanished, and he sold it in February 2021. The site was searched in November 2020 after Andrew, Suzanne's brother, paid $18,000 for the search. When cadaver dogs were employed, they were able to detect the smell of human remains. Linda Stanley, the district attorney, was also instrumental in advancing the case to its current state. She said something like this: "This day is dedicated to Suzanne, her family, and everyone who had the pleasure of getting to know, love, and care for her. These are the only information that have been made public thus far. However, it appears that the perpetrator is currently in jail." Thomas Gilbert. On January 4, 2015, New York's elite society was taken aback by 911 calls. Wall Street hedge fund manager Thomas Gilbert, 70, was shot and killed in his own home. The fact that his own son, Thomas "Tommy" Gilbert Jr., 31, killed him rather than some random invader made the case even more horrifying. Tommy's mother, Shelley, discovered her husband bleeding out from a gunshot wound to the head. That was all that remained. How could this have happened? Did the father and son have a strained relationship, or was there a deeper reason behind this? After 2 exhausting rounds of tennis at the River Club, Thomas Gilbert was unwinding at his East Side Manhattan home just 3 days after New Year's Day 2015. His 65-year-old wife, Shelley, was using her laptop to communicate with pals while he was unwinding in his bedroom and watching a football game. Around 3:15 p.m., the front doorbell went off. Shelley was shocked to see her son had dropped by unexpectedly when she answered the door. Tommy stood there with a duffel bag in his hand and a hoodie on after 5 months without speaking. It should be noted that Tommy's relationship with his father had not always been harmonious. Tommy had no desire to take over the family business despite his father's wishes. But when Shelley finally saw him that day, she was filled with joy and optimism that their long-standing disagreement may be resolved. Tommy informed his mother that he wanted to meet his father so they could discuss business, and she wishes he had been there for that alone. Tommy asked Shelley if his younger sister Bess was home as he was strolling into the apartment, but she told him she was at church. Tommy went on to say that he was hungry and asked his mother to get him a sandwich and a Coke from the supermarket. In order for him to have ample time alone with his father, he asked her to return in an hour. Shelley offered to make the sandwich alone because she wasn't sure she should leave them together. But Tommy insisted she had to leave. Shelley sensed something wasn't right with her son as she was tying her shoes for her evening out. But in the end, she made the decision to go. But soon after leaving the apartment, she couldn't get rid of the uneasy sensation. So Shelley went back to her apartment building and rode the elevator to the 8th story to make sure everything was all right rather than going to the store. But by the time she came back, Tommy had vanished, leaving a terrifying scene in his wake. Thomas Gilbert, her spouse, had been fatally shot by gunfire. His head was bleeding profusely, and he was holding a 40mm Glock against his chest with his left hand. The 911 call that explained Tommy's actions did not necessitate a thorough investigation to identify a suspect, but the police still sought some proof to establish Tommy's guilt. The police learned that Tommy was a Princeton graduate who had never been able to secure steady work from Shelley's claims. Tommy had experienced an opulent life as a pampered son. His preference was more for clubbing and surfing than he was for inheriting and running his father's company. His father reduced his weekly allowance from $1,000 to $300 just hours before the murder in an effort to instill some independence in his son. This fact showed up as a potential reason why he would kill his father. Tommy had been dealing with mental health issues, and Shelley informed the police that he might not have considered the repercussions of his actions. Tommy showed symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder as a teenager. Doctors later believed he might have been schizophrenia, but he refused assistance, frequently ignoring family texts and phone calls. But Shelley's declaration alone was insufficient to shield her son. The New York Police Department launched a manhunt almost once and 6 hours after Tommy's death. Police were able to locate his Chelsea apartment using his cell phone. Tommy astonished them by knocking on his door and being so nonchalant about it. In addition, he informed the police that he was speaking with his lawyer on the phone when they came. Following his arrest, Tommy faced charges of murder and unlawful possession of a weapon. Detectives interviewed Tommy's relatives and acquaintances and learned that he was accused of setting a fire at a home owned by prominent banker Peter Smith Sr. in the Hamptons back in 2014. There were no accusations made against Tommy. Tommy and Peter Smith Jr., the owner's son, were friends before they fell out. Investigators also learned that Tommy had purchased his own firearm online a few months before to the murder and had to drive all the way to Ohio with it because it was against the law to mail it. In the months preceding his father's death, the authorities also examined his computer and discovered that he had been looking for websites such as .com and .com. Based on the available information, Tommy appeared to be experiencing symptoms of a mental illness, but his day was not going to get better. A person must comprehend the charges against them, be competent to participate in their own defense, and understand how the court system operates in order to be deemed legally capable. It is possible to find someone competent to stand trial even if they suffer from a severe mental disease. And Tommy experienced precisely that. Tommy's defense team said that his mental state was deteriorating while he was being held in detention and that he was unable to stand trial. Tommy developed depression, psychosis, paranoid illness, and schizophrenia. According to the testimony of 3 doctors and a psychologist who were called to testify, the defense experts added that he harbored hostile thoughts toward his father as a result of his delusions. Nevertheless, the trial started in 2019 after the prosecution also engaged a medical expert who deemed the defendant fit to stand trial. Shelley Gilbert, the son's mother, testified in court that her son had not acted out of retaliation or money grubbing, but rather that he had become so mentally ill that he was unable to comprehend that what he had done when he shot his father was wrong or illegal. Mr. Craig Ordner, the chief prosecutor, refuted the statement. He added that when Tommy placed the gun in his father's hand to give the impression that he had committed suicide, he was completely aware of the circumstances. Tommy also demonstrated how well he grasped the repercussions of his actions by calling his attorney before the cops had located him. Shelley implored the magistrate to commit her son to a mental health institution. She informed them that his father would have also desired for him to be given another chance, but that was not going to occur. For 5 weeks, Mr. Orner painted Tommy as a resentful son who went to Ohio to purchase a pistol he saw on Facebook and allegedly planned to kill his father. Tommy's claim of insanity was rejected, and on June 28, 2019, he was convicted guilty of second-degree murder and 2 counts of possessing weapons. And on September 27, 2019, 2 months later, he received a sentence that carried a maximum of 30 years to life in jail. He'll be 65 years old when he becomes eligible for parole. Moving on to the next case. Sophie Toussaint Duplantier, Paris, France was home to 39-year-old documentary producer Sophie Toussaint Duplantier. She captivated everyone she came into contact with her intelligence and beauty. Her complexion was as pale as porcelain, yet her hair was a fiery gold. Her radiant grin shone under the lights of the events she attended. In the numerous paparazzi cameras that bordered the premieres and high society parties, she was invited to immortalize her breathtaking image. When Sophie first met Daniel Toussaint Duplantier, she was raising her kid from a previous marriage alone. In the French film industry, Daniel was a well-known and renowned film producer. In 1988, Sophie and him were romantically involved after meeting at work. Although Daniel and Sophie had already been married twice and were 16 years apart, they connected intellectually and shared similar passions and interests in work. On June 18, 1991, Daniel and Sophie were married. Whereas Sophie desired a much simpler and more secluded life, Daniel led a life full with premieres and parties. Sophie fell in love with Ireland's scenery during her multiple visits there as a teenager. To get away from her hectic socialite life, Sophie purchased a vacation property in Shoal, Ireland, in 1993, close to Tormayer, West Cork. She selected a rather remote house on windy days. Its windows and doors rattled, and it lacked light and heating. She would frequently spend the holidays with her kid at this remote house. Sophie made the decision to take a vacation by plane to Ireland on December 19, 1996. She requested a few friends and family members to go with her, but as Christmas was quickly approaching, nobody was available. So she made the decision to travel alone on December 20th. 1996, she landed in Ireland early and leased a Ford Fiesta to go to her vacation house in Tumor, West Cork. She intended to spend a few days there before spending Christmas in Paris. She made a stop at a Texaco gas station en route to her residence in order to get wood for starting a fire. After that, she went to Scholl's Courtyard Bar and had lunch there between 3:30 and 4 p.m., after which she drove home. She called the housekeeper as soon as she got there to speak with her. She brought goods into town the following day and took out cash from the ATM. About 4:30 p.m., she made her way back to her home. When last seen, she was outside her residence. She is thought to have spent the rest of the day at the house. She tried to reach Daniel in France later that night, but he did not answer. But he gave her a call back at about 11 at night. Daniel reported that their chat was fairly amicable and that Sophie appeared to be unfazed. On December 22nd, the next day, she went to the Dunluff ruins at Three Castles Head. She went to see a friend later that day and told her about the woman she had seen at the ruins who had really startled her. Sophie had stated, "Oh my God, I saw a woman like a white shape." According to her acquaintance, the people in the area think Sophie had seen the Lady of the Lake. The Lady of the Lake is an urban legend that claims to be a ghost that haunts the castle ruins, and that seeing her will cause death in a matter of hours. On December 23, 1996, at approximately 10 in the morning, Sophie's corpse would be discovered in the laneway next to her vacation house. Shirley Foster, a neighbor, made the discovery of her. Sophie was discovered with her boots, liquor leggings, and white top on. Her clothing became entangled in the barbed wire encircling her residence. Her murder had been terrible. Her hands and arms were covered in several defensive wounds. She had likely been struck with a fire poker as she had sustained significant injuries to her head and upper chest. She had sustained serious facial and head injuries. Sophie was found lying on the ground, and a concrete block that looked like it had been dropped on her head was discovered at the murder site. Her body was surrounded by a pool of blood, and the middle gate nearby had blood stains on it. Police entered the house and discovered it to be unaltered. There was not the slightest indication of a break-in. It appeared that someone had visited Sophie that evening because her bed was not made and 2 wine glasses were left to dry on the draining board next to the kitchen sink. An expert in fingerprints attempted to remove fingerprints from wine glasses and other household items, but the attempt was unsuccessful. Other than Sophie's fingerprint, the expert was unable to locate any others. Between Sophie's fingernails, there were hair strands stained with blood. Nonetheless, forensic examination identified the blood and hair as belonging to Sophie. Oddly, not a single bit of DNA evidence was discovered by the police at the crime scene. The house's front and rear doors were latching and closed when the police arrived. The laneway's massive gate was ajar, despite the fact that the neighbors claimed Sophie typically kept it locked. According to the police, Sophie was attacked inside her house, but she managed to flee and make her way outdoors where she attempted to scale a fence, but got tangled in the barbed wire. This allowed her assassin enough time to track her down and execute her with brutality. Since Sophie's body was discovered close to Breyer's, authorities think the murderer may have suffered injuries and may have had markings or scratches on his hands and face. Over the following few days, police conducted questionnaires about the murder and conducted door-to-door interviews with residents. Over the course of the inquiry, 50 suspects would be eliminated in total. A local business owner named Marie Farrell reported to the police on December 27, 1996, that she had seen Sophie in her store on December 21st, sometime about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Marie reported seeing a man with an extremely long black coat standing outside her store. She claimed that the man followed Sophie out of the store. A lady calling police under the alias Fiona made contact with them on January 11, 1997. She informed them that the night Sophie was killed at around 3 in the morning, she had spotted a man by Kelfila Bridge. Sophie's house is only 2.6 kilometers away from Kelfila Bridge. The woman ended the call without providing any more details. The call was traced to a public phone booth by the police. Fiona was asked to get in touch with the police on January 20th in order to provide them with any information on the individual she had seen near Kilfodder Bridge. Fiona reported her sighting to the police over the phone the next day. Once more, the call was made from a pay phone. Fiona called the police again on January 24th, this time letting them know that she was unable to meet with them to discuss the sighting. However, when authorities followed the call this time, they discovered that Marie Farrell's house was the source. Marie Farrell, the proprietor of the shop who had reported seeing a man in a long black coat pursuing Sophie, was Fiona. She explained to police that she didn't want to make a public statement because the night she saw the man on the bridge, she was with another man and she didn't want her husband to find out. She added that there was a man on the bridge who was swinging his arms wildly and looked to be intoxicated. Afterwards, she claimed to have seen the man once more in January at a nearby store, and she had identified him to the police. They found out that Ian Bailey was the man she had indicated. Journalist Ian Bailey resides in Shoal, Ireland. He relocated to Shoal in 1991 from Manchester, England, where he had been born and raised. Bailey met Welsh artist Jules Thomas while working as a freelance journalist. Bailey moved into Leeskia, Shoal, to live with Jules. Bailey allegedly had a history of abusing Jules at home, and in 2001, he was found guilty of assault. The first journalist to arrive at Sophie's crime scene was Bailey. At 1:40 p.m., Bailey received a call concerning the murder of a foreign nationalist from Eddie Cassidy, a reporter for the Irish Examiner. Despite the fact that there were a lot of foreign nationalists residing in West Cork at the time, it is said that Bailey and Jules went directly to the location of the crime. A witness claims that Bailey had informed them at approximately 11:45 p.m. that day that he was covering a French woman's later. When questioned about how he knew the victim was French at the time, neither the police nor the media were aware of this. Barley replied that Eddie Cassidy had informed him that the victim was a French woman. When questioned, Eddie Cassidy said that he had merely informed him that the deceased was a foreign nationalist and that he was unaware of the victim's nationality at the time. Bailey wrote several stories about the case in the days that followed. He said in the papers that the woman had several male partners in France and that it was probable that one of them had killed her. He also revealed facts about the crime scene that the general public was unaware of. It seems as though he directed the inquiry from West Cork to France. Furthermore, in the days following the murder, a number of witnesses claimed to have seen Bailey with numerous scratches on his arms. Bailey claimed that he had cut down a Christmas tree, which is what caused the scratches. He claimed to have gotten up to the top of a pine tree, saw the top fall off and scratched his arms trying to bring it down the tree. In addition, Bailey claimed to have acquired a scratch on his forehead while murdering 3 turkeys. Bailey and Jules were taken into custody on February 10th in connection with Sophie Toussaint Duplantier's murder. When asked where he had been, he told police that the previous evening he had gone to a nearby pub with Jules and had arrived home at around 12:30 in the morning. After that, he said he went to bed and slept till the next morning. At first, Jules confirmed his account. Jules later claimed, though, that Bailey might have gotten out of bed an hour or so later. When Jules visited him again at 9 in the morning, she reported that he had a new scratch on his forehead. Bailey then asserted that he had gotten out of bed, but it was only at 4 in the morning and that he had spent 30 minutes writing an article before going back to sleep. Afterwards, Bailey and Jules were freed from custody with no charges. Later on, several people would come forward to claim that Bailey had admitted to killing Sophie. On February 4th, Malachi Reed, a youngster, reported to the police that Bailey had claimed to have killed Sophie, stating that he had, quote, gone up there with a rock and bashed her effing brains out while giving him a lift home. When Bailey admitted to killing Sophie in 1998 while out drinking with Richie and Rosie Shelley, he said, I did it. I completed it. I overreached myself. Bailey was detained once more in 1998 in connection with Sophie's murder, but this time he was not prosecuted. Marie Farrell testified for the newspapers in a 2003 libel trial proving that Bailey was the man she saw on the bridge. Following that, Marie claimed Bailey harassed her. And in 2004, Bailey threatened to take Marie to court if she did not take back her statement. Retraction of the statement and admission of coercion by the police to misidentify Bailey as the man she saw on the Cuyahoga Bridge were the highlights of Marie's 2005 statement. Bailey's arrest warrant was issued in 2010 by a French magistrate. However, in 2012 and again in 2017, the Irish Supreme Court rejected his request for extradition. A French court tried Bailey absentee in 2019. On May 31, 2019, Bailey was found guilty of murder and given a 25-year prison term. Bailey has not been charged in Ireland with Sophie's murder despite multiple arrests, because there is insufficient evidence connecting him to the crime. Bailey still maintains his innocence and resides in West Cork. The case is still open. Patricia Carnahan, the body of an unnamed woman, was discovered in a state park in 1979. The case remained unsolved for many years. It wasn't until 2023 that important breakthroughs such as improvements in forensic science and interstate cooperation gave fresh insight into the enduring enigma and led to the attacker's prosecution. The date was September 28, 1979 at the Sugar Pine Point State Park campground on Lake Tahoe. A woman's body was found. She looked as though she had been strangled and had been severely battered and wounded. She was wearing some jewelry and was probably in her early 40s. She carried a wristwatch, a necklace of a deer, and a few rings. The 3 individuals who found her dead did not contact the police right away. Rather, they made a call to a nearby newspaper and disappeared. After that, the reporter notified law enforcement. Due to outstanding arrest warrants, police discovered that the 3 guys had neglected to report their discovery. For this particular offense, they were all exonerated. Remarkably, an autopsy would show that Jane Doe was probably still alive when they found her. She was subjected to an SA kit test since it seemed like she had been abused. To gather evidence, these kits include sterile containers, combs, microscope slides, collection bags, and other items. With the aid of these kits, victims' hairs, saliva, blood, and other bodily fluids are removed in order to establish the assault and identify the culprit. It was discovered that she had taken significant hits to her body, and there were defensive wounds that showed she had retaliated. Around the picnic area on the western side of the lake, there were several indications of fighting, and the victim misplaced one of her flip-flops in her attempt to flee her attacker. The investigating cops spotted an empty beer bottle beside the body, which they mistakenly bagged despite finding very little other evidence. Forensic technology was not as developed in 1979 as it is now. The body was kept for a very long time in the morgue and the evidence was filed away. The decision was made to bury the unidentified woman in an unmarked grave in a potter's field in El Dorado County, since no one came forward to claim her. As it was then, Lake Tahoe has always been a well-liked vacation spot. People from all over the world constantly flock to the beaches and campsites, so it was challenging to find this woman. She can be from wherever. There was no way to find out who she was or how she got there at the time because police did not find a car or any other possessions. Due to technological limitations, it was deemed a cold case and was withdrawn from consideration. The victims and the beer bottle's DNA were examined years later in 1986 when the technology of DNA testing was developed. It was evident the attacker owned the bottle, but until decades later, nothing more was done. In 2014, investigating officer John Gaines took up this case some 36 years after it began. He reopened Jane Doe's files from Lake Tahoe. It opened cases from the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s as part of El Dorado County's cold case unit. He dug out the body in the Jane Doe case at Lake Tahoe. In an effort to identify her, he printed pictures of her jewelry to be distributed to the public while accompanied by a forensic anthropologist from California State University, Chico. Local publications ran the photos, but there were few leads. Gain took attention of the necklace and discovered that the deer necklace was actually a high pendant, symbolic of the Jewish life emblem. According to him, Elvis Presley used to wear a pendant similar to this while performing. Gaines tried his luck with the local Jewish community using a high pendant as a lead. Rabbi Morty Rickler, a local rabbi in Lake Tahoe who had recently opened a Chabad center, expressed surprise when police contacted him. Since the Chabad is seen as a Jewish community center, cops are not frequently seen there. It is a sacred location of tranquility and purity. After hearing the details of the situation, Rabbi Rickler was eager to assist and inform the neighborhood. When the body was found in 1979, very few Jewish families had recently moved to the Lake Tahoe region. Over 1,000 Jews lived in the region and there were now 2 synagogues. 3 plainclothes officers with firearms and badges paid Rabbi Yossi Grossbaum a visit in September 2015. Gaines arrived in Folsom, California, hoping to make contact with the victims' living relatives. In Northern California and throughout the state, Rabbi Grossbaum disseminated the information. Eventually, a family identified the pendant in the press and stepped forward. The claimed victim's daughter and the remains underwent a DNA test, and the results showed a match. Patricia Carnahan, who would have been 35 years old at the time of her death, was eventually identified as the body. Patricia, who was originally from Virginia, had left on a solitary road trip through California. She had a red Volkswagen bus under her belt. She never made it home, despite having called her family to let them know she was on her way. In October 1979, a month later, the family filed a missing persons report. Her vehicle was retrieved from a Venice, California dealership. It appeared that the car had been left unattended in the lot. Regretfully, no connection was established because she was a Virginia missing persons case. In addition, the perpetrator's DNA and Patricia's DNA profile were deposited into CODIS, the FBI's unified DNA system, but no one could match that for many more years. After that, her body was given to her family so they could bury her properly. And 26 years after her tragic death, she was placed to rest. But the offender continued to be at large. Years later, the attacker was apprehended due to a totally different series of events. The Washington State SAKIT initiative, which sought to reactivate abuse inquiry testing from the 1970s onward in an effort to apprehend the offenders, received financing from the state of Washington in 2023. One of the few police departments with full-time personnel dedicated to abuse probe test cases was the Spokane Police Department. More than 250 of the more than 1,500 kits in the SPD were matched using the combined DNA index approach. This resulted in an enormous discovery. A man in Spokane was charged in 1994 of having his way with a homeless woman. She sent the police a complaint on the occurrence, had herself tested to confirm her allegation, and designated Harold Carpenter as the person who had attacked her. He was arrested for coercing her against her will in the second degree, but the woman chose not to pursue legal action. Therefore, the case was dropped. Harold Carpenter asserted that he did not defile her and that their relationship was consensual. His word was therefore in opposition to hers. The test kit was uploaded into Cody's after being filed away. The DNA on the system matched Patricia Carnahan's body and the empty beer bottles. But the woman who had filed the complaint had long ago passed away. After more research, Carpenter was identified as being close to the incident on September 29, 1979, when he was detained for driving under the influence in Susanville, California. In addition to being charged for a second non-consensual event involving a woman in 1994, Carpenter was arrested for a number of misdemeanors between 1990 and 1993. Prior to his divorce in 1998, he was married and resided in Sandpoint. She had accused him of domestic abuse. He was charged with possession of illegal narcotics, reckless driving, multiple DUIs, and in disturbing the peace in Bonner County between 1998 and 2018. Other than one DUI in 2000, he didn't have anything on file in Washington. After being made homeless in 2016, Carpenter moved to Spokane Street. He was detained as a suspect in a different non-consensual case in Spokane County in 2018. However, the allegations were not validated. His homelessness was discussed in an article that appeared in the Inlander in 2020. You simply got through it. Simply step outside and attempt to avoid the snow, rain, or other elements. He was under suspicion for an alleged groping incident in 2022, but once more, no arrest was made. He relocated to Spokane's downtown Park Tower apartments. El Dorado County investigators now had a reason to make an arrest of him, and the Spokane Police Department assisted in Carpenter's whereabouts. The 63-year-old was apprehended on March 1, 2023, for the murder of Patricia Carnahan, and he was brought to justice as a result of the cooperation of multiple states' agencies. The Spokane case was not pursued because of the statute of limitations, and no charges were brought against him in that specific case. He is being held in Spokane County Jail without bond while he waits to be extradited to El Dorado so that he can face charges for his actions. The long-running cold case was eventually solved. Thanks to forensic technology advancements and cross-state agency cooperation, Patricia Carnahan's attacker was identified 44 years later. Nearly 50 years later, the mystery surrounding the 1979 Lake Tahoe Jane Doe has been solved. Moving on to the next case. Sabrina Underwood, nestled in the northwestern Arkansas Ozark Mountains, Huntsville, Arkansas, was a small, tight-knit rural town in the 1990s. The town was a place where community ties were strong and life proceeded at a slower pace compared to larger urban regions. Its character was profoundly anchored in its historical and agricultural traditions. Throughout the 1990s, Huntsville's community life was characterized by a strong sense of solidarity. Locals were frequently acquainted, and the town's social fabric was knitted by a variety of neighborhood activities. Every year, the people of Huntsville eagerly anticipated the town fairs, parades, and festivals. These events gave participants a chance to socialize and cement their ties to the community in addition to offering entertainment. This rustic setting served as the setting for the tragic story of Sabrina Underwood. On January 20th, 1991, Sabrina Underwood, then 19 years old, vanished from sight after her mother let her off at the U.S. Highway 41262 in Boone County, close to Bear Creek. At the time, Sabrina was traveling to Calico Rock to see her boyfriend who was serving time in jail. The neighborhood was shocked by Sabrina's abduction, and her mother never saw her again. There were months of tense anticipation after Sabrina vanished. Then, on April 8, 1991, a somber finding stunned the town. A hunter discovered human remains close to the Gum Spring Cemetery, northwest of Little Rock, along with hair, underwear, and an ear stud. It was determined that the bones belonged to Sabrina Underwood, whose destiny was very different from what she had intended to accomplish. The cause of Sabrina's death was initially ruled as unknown, which sparked a laborious and devastating investigation. Law enforcement agents put in a great deal of effort in interviewing suspects, following up on leads, and trying to piece together the details of her case. Their diligent work went unrewarded as the case eventually fizzled out, leaving Huntsville under a cloud of unanswered mystery for years to come. The darkness would not lift for over 30 years. A crucial tip surfaced in July 2022, launching the probe once more. A startling and unsettling confession letter was in the possession of a local lawyer whose client was serving time in an Arkansas state prison. When his estranged wife, Kirsty Headley, was killed in 2018, the client, Rick Allen Headley, was already serving a life sentence. The confession letter gave the long-abandoned case new life by revealing graphic details of Sabrina Underwood's terrible demise. Rick Allen Headley was questioned by detectives right away regarding the contents of the confession letter. His shocking information would throw light on the horrific crime that had been hidden for almost 30 years. Headley confessed to the crime, and his account read like a terrifying story that had come to pass in the sleepy town of Huntsville. Headley's admission, according to the affidavit, gave a bleak impression of Sabrina's last moments. At a gas stop, he said, Sabrina approached him and asked for a ride. Hadley would be plagued by the events of that ride for years to come. In a startling change of events, Sabrina approached Hadley and startlingly demanded money, threatening to harm him if he rejected her advances. Hadley told a terrifying story of the events leading up to Sabrina's terrible end. Following their sexual session in his truck, Sabrina told him she would require a large payment from him, or she would disclose that he had hurt her. Headley was taken aback by this news and realized that trouble was ahead. The subsequent occurrences were really terrifying. Though the seriousness of the situation weighed hard on him, Headley made the decision to leave Sabrina behind and drive away. He felt that he had to prevent her from ruining his life. At this time, he attacked her outside the truck with great violence. He carried her into a little graveyard that was concealed from onlookers' gaze in a startling and gory act. The account of the actual slaughter is really frightening. Headley admitted to severing Sabrina's neck with a Rambo-style knife that had a compass attached at the end. He gave a vivid account of how he snapped the bone and removed her head from her body by hammering on the knife blade with a rock. He said that his goal was to make sure Sabrina never found out what had happened to her. After doing this horrific deed, Headley hid Sabrina's body from sight by covering it with logs and foliage. Then he collected her possessions and put them close to her body. The knife and rock used in the horrific act were thrown into a stretch of woods many miles distant. Headley took off his blood-stained clothes at his mountain home apartment, threw them in a garbage bag, and showered to rid himself of Sabrina's blood. His garments were in the garbage bag that was thrown in the dumpster behind the mall. Headley then walked out of the place. In addition to sending shockwaves across Huntsville, Headley's confession gave Sabrina's family, who had suffered through decades of suffering and uncertainty, some degree of comfort and closure. A much-needed turning point in the pursuit of justice in the unsolved Sabrina Lynn Underwood case has been reached with the apprehension of Rick Allen Headley. He is currently being charged in relation to Sabrina's case, and the community is eagerly awaiting his anticipated court appearance in Fulton County Circuit Court in late November 2023. The case serves as a sobering reminder of both the small-town community's unwavering spirit and the police enforcement's unwavering loyalty. Moving on to the next case. Shelley and Warner imagine a small town in the summer of 1980 where everyone was laughing and life seemed to go on without a hitch. However, in the heart of this town, called Mishawaka, a terrible tragedy occurred that would haunt the residents for the rest of their lives. Shelley and Warner, at 15 years old, vanished from sight on June 15, 1980, leaving her family devastated. Her lifeless body with a gunshot wound to the head was discovered next to the Madison Road railroad tracks 10 agonizing days later. In a quiet village, how could such a horrific act take place? Who may have committed this heinous act? The bustling commercial city of Mishawaka in northern Indiana has a certain charm all its own. Thanks to Penn Township's ideal location along the St. Joseph River in St. Joseph County, everyday life is set against a breathtaking backdrop. With a population of roughly 51,000, The city is delighted to be called the Princess City. In Mishawaka, new residential subdivisions and established neighborhoods coexist. The city was carefully designed to promote a strong sense of community and connectedness. The people there are well known for their generosity, camaraderie, and mutual love of adventure. A horrific incident that irrevocably ruined Mishawaka's tranquility and etched its name in the annals of tragedy occurred even in this close-knit community. On July 4, 1964, Shelley Ann Werner was born, although not much is known about her early life. She shared a home in Mishawaka, Indiana, with her mother, Kathleen Werner. Following the split of her parents, Shelley was raised by her mother. Her mother was an elementary school teacher in the neighborhood. At the tender age of 15, Shelley enrolled at Mishawaka High School, where she played sports and sang in the band. She was single and had no enemies that she was aware of. Young Shelley had a bright future ahead of her and was motivated to achieve her objectives. She was optimistic and lively. At the moment, Shelley was brimming with youthful energy and enthusiasm for life's possibilities. She had no idea that fate had other ideas for her. Mishawaka's quiet routine was upended on June 16, 1980 by an occurrence that would leave the community irrevocably traumatized. Shelley Ann Werner, a 15-year-old Mishawaka high school student, started out on what was meant to be a normal day. She drove her 1973 Volkswagen 2 miles to the nearest Wilkes grocery, wishing her mother Kathleen a fond farewell. Time passed, and there was an eerie calm surrounding the Werner residence. Shelley hasn't returned to her house in more than an hour. Kathleen quickly began to experience terror and anxiety. Kathleen waited a little longer till she was forced to phone the police due to her desperation. Her voice faltered when she told the authorities about her daughter's disappearance. At first, the Mishawaka Police Department handled the case as a missing persons case because they believed it included a young runaway. But as time passed, a horrifying insight became clear. After a torturous 24 hours, Shelley was still nowhere to be found. As their degree of concern grew, investigators quickly modified the investigation status to suspected abduction. There were no overt indicators of foul play, which left detectives perplexed in those early hours of desperation. Kathleen's first call was reported as a regular missing person, but nothing had changed by the next day. Mishawaka town was now under the shadow of suspicion, setting the stage for an unsettling mystery that would unfold over many years. Following an immediate inquiry, the authorities learned that Shelley had arrived to Wilt's supermarket on June 16th of that year. At approximately 1:30 p.m., she was seen shopping for groceries, and at approximately 2:00 p.m., she was seen exiting the store. She made her way to her car, which was parked roughly 50 feet from the store's entrance. But things took a turn for the worst as soon as she got into her car. A man with blonde hair, who appeared to be between 16 and 18 years old, with a height of 5'7" and a weight of approximately all 130 pounds, was observed skulking around the shop. The young man allegedly approached Shelley's automobile further closely. According to witnesses, abruptly he took over the driving and shoved Shelley into the passenger seat. They claim that Shelley looked taken aback by the abrupt intrusion. The witnesses could only see the man's back. As a result, it was difficult to tell if Shelley was in danger or if someone was using a weapon to silence her. Shelley was in the passenger seat when the man quickly drove off. It was an astonishing and frightening conduct that left bystanders perplexed. Anxious family members and friends launched a big collective hunt to see if anyone might learn anything about the missing little child. Authorities issued a drawing of the first suspect based on the witness's statement in an attempt to enlist the public's assistance. A terrible discovery made a few hours later made them even more afraid of the unknown. Shelley's automobile was discovered abandoned in the parking lot of the neighboring OSS Shull, Indiana shopping center. There was no trace of a scuffle inside the car, and Shelley was not present. As investigators attempted to piece together what had transpired, they kept looking for information. Two young females were exploring a wooded region outside of South Bend, Indiana, after 10 days of suffering and frustration when they saw an awful sight. A young woman's half-nude body was discovered in a ditch next to the railroad tracks. The young lady was later identified as Shelley Ann Werner by dental records. It was evident from the scene that she had died there. 2 close-range shots in her were fired with a large-caliber gun. The investigation was a crazy journey with lots of leads and no leads. Hypnosis was the final desperate measure the police took in their quest for answers. For witnesses from the grocery shop were put under hypnosis in the hopes that they might recall important details regarding Shelley's kidnapping. The first suspect was given a fresh sketch after these hypnosis sessions, which revealed that he had been dropped off at the business and looked to be hitchhiking. Prior to entering the store, Shelley was allegedly observed talking to 2 young women by the witnesses. However, no one was aware of the identities of those 2 women or their potential connection to Shelley's kidnapping. Every attempt was made by law enforcement to capture the criminal. However, they were not successful. Many men who fit the description were taken in by the police. However, none of them could be recognized in a lineup as the kidnapper because neither the man who dropped off the suspect nor the 2 young women Shelley had spoken to could be found. The authorities were frustrated and the case remained unresolved. The ledge eventually dried up, ending the inquiry. The murder of Shelley had long puzzled the investigators. Her cause of death remained a mystery, and she appeared to be an ordinary high school student. It's interesting to note that witnesses claimed Shelley seemed shocked when the man got into her car. It was impossible to rule out the idea that she knew who killed her. Shelley Werner's kidnapping and murder soon became a cold case, a long-hanging, terrible mystery that plagued Mishawaka. The investigation was taken over by the Cold Case Division of the Mishawaka Police Department following the St. In late 2021, the Joseph County Metro Homicide Unit was dissolved. Their mission was to solve the riddle that had troubled them for years. With time, Shelley Werner's unsolved murder has cast a long shadow. However, a significant witness came forward in April 2023, 43 years later, throwing new light on the horrifying case and offering a ray of hope in the shadows. At last, the witness, a woman who had been silent out of fear for her family's safety, missed her opportunity to speak up. This witness had been intimidated by the suspect. In order to solve the case, Detectives Dave Dossman, Tim Corbett, and Sam Walsh worked non-stop, according to Jim Campbell. The testimony of the witness was a paradigm-shifting discovery. She identified the 3 people in charge of killing Shelley, but the authorities withheld their identities. It was shocking to learn that Shelley knew very little about these individuals. Since they were older than she was, she most likely only knew their family. However, the authorities have not disclosed the reason for her injuries or the perpetrator. 2 of the suspects died over the years. The fact that one had died in 2001, the second had also perished in 2010, and the third had vanished into thin air had not previously been known to the detectives. The inquiry into Shelley's kidnapping and subsequent murder was reopened as a result of this new information. When investigators looked more closely into the past of the 3 individuals, they discovered a horrible history of violence. Confirming the first witness report, these men seemed to have played a direct role in the untimely death of Shelley. The witness only felt safe talking to the authorities after 2 of the accused had died. The police eventually found out. For the aim of investigating unresolved homicide cases like Shelley's, the Mishawaka Police Department established a cold case team in January 2022, consisting of former South Bend homicide detectives. This team worked very hard to locate further witnesses and gather evidence to back up the initial witness statement. However, upon closer inspection, they learned that the 3rd suspect died in 2018. The fact that 3 men were implicated in Shelley and Warner's kidnapping and murder was a significant revelation. It demonstrated the importance of a witness' bravery in coming forward almost 40 years after the horrific event. The witness was motivated by the fact that 2 of the suspects had died and the 3rd had disappeared. The fear and intimidation these suspects had used over the years to conceal crucial information added to the anguish of Shelley's family and the neighborhood. Cold case investigator Jim Campbell discussed the difficulties witnesses faced and how family intimidation had suppressed their testimony. Despite the fact that the 3 suspects' involvement was clearly shown by the investigators' testimony and evidence, there was a significant issue that was unavoidable. Since all 3 suspects had already passed away, how could the investigators carry out their investigation and provide Shelley's family with closure and justice? The St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office reviewed the evidence and declared it conclusive, closing the case. It did not take long to realize that the dead could not face legal repercussions. Aside from their age and acquaintance with Shelley, not much information was available regarding the suspects. However, the St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office ruling provided resolution. Though the suspects were deceased, there was optimism that the truth would come to light and Shelley's family could finally rest in peace. The witnesses' vital knowledge set off a coincidental chain of events that resulted in additional witnesses and evidence. The St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office stated that although DNA testing was unable to produce a conclusive match, other evidence and statements were vital. Unfortunately, because of their demise, the suspects' identities remain a mystery, making it impossible to press charges. Ultimately, individuals dedicated to attaining justice had not allowed the passing of time to erode their determination. The murder of Shelley Inn. Werner had been solved because of the investigators' perseverance and the bravery of a witness who stepped forward to reveal a terrible chapter in Mishawaka's past. The verdict in the Shelley Inn. Werner case caused a spectrum of feelings in those who were directly engaged. The investigators who had toiled for years to sit with Lee in order to find the truth found some solace in the case's ending. Tim Corbett, one of the cold case investigators, remarked, "I hope she's sitting next to God. I am grateful to the police, the public, and all those who assisted with the case." Even still, there remained a persistent sense of sadness until the case's end. Family members of Shelley remained silent about the updates since they were understandably private in their loss. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe that justice has actually been done? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. Moving on to the next case. Henry Kendall Thor. Henry Kendall, born in 1871 in Pennsylvania. Thor was the heir apparent to a multimillion-dollar fortune and the son of railroad and coal baron William Thor Sr., even as a young child. Thor was well known for being unpredictable, exhibiting signs of sleeplessness, nonsensical speech, and tantrums. He was labeled as a troublemaker and dumb by teachers while attending different private schools. In the end, he enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh before moving to Harvard. However, he was expelled afterwards. He didn't spend much time studying in college, choosing instead to indulge in drinking binges and cockfights. Once, despite being on a $2,500 monthly allowance at a period when the average annual pay was about $500, he chased down a cab driver with a shotgun because he felt the man had defrauded him of $10. He was called a playboy and would frequently light cigarettes with $100 bills. After being expelled from Harvard, Thor was shunned by elites in New York City. He held Stanford White, a well-known architect, responsible for this, claiming that he opposed Thor's admittance into these exclusive circles. That is, until he saw model Florence Evelyn Nesbit, and his fixation with White only intensified. White and Evelyn have been friends since Evelyn was 15. And when she was about 16, he had raped her while she was asleep, loading her down with alcohol. Thor was an older, extremely affluent man who greatly pleased Evelyn's mother and headmistress. He would always come to her with presents, cash, and words of appreciation. Eventually, they would travel to Europe together, where he proposed to Evelyn. She refused at first as she knew Thor was fixated on female virginity. But she later told him the truth about what had transpired with White, which infuriated him. Since Evelyn was no longer a virgin, he believed that White had destroyed Evelyn. 1905 saw the couple's marriage. Evelyn and Thor, together with a few others, traveled to Madison Square Garden on June 25, 1906 for a show that ended at approximately 11 o'clock at night. White now emerged and sat down at one of the surrounding tables. During the show's finale, Thor, who had been furious all day, approached White and produced a gun. He shot White 3 times from 2 feet away. He didn't try to get away from the scene or take credit for the architect's death. Instead, he stood over his corpse afterwards, saying, "I did it because he ruined my wife instead." Nevertheless, other witnesses assert that he might have spoken life instead of wife. He had it coming to him, he continued. After taking advantage of the girl, he left her behind. Thor was refused bail after being accused of first-degree murder. He slept on a brass bed rather than a regular prison cot, had his meals made by his favorite restaurants while he was incarcerated awaiting trial, dressed in custom clothing rather than the prison uniform, and was permitted to drink champagne and wine. In the days after the murder, he was said to have been overjoyed, and he later claimed to have heard the voices of young girls in heaven calling out to him. This, he believed, was a sign of heavenly blessing. Thor's mother, who had been defending the family reputation for years by settling lawsuits brought by her son, hired the top defense attorney available, which would have cost the family $750,000 in today's currency. When Mrs. Thor's lawyers thought that would be the best defense, they first insisted that her son not be stigmatized by clinical lunacy. Thus, the two came to an agreement whereby Thor would claim temporary insanity. It's been said that Ms. Thor's son inherited her family's history of mental illness. He had physically and sexually abused Evelyn throughout the years, had a tendency to seduce victims into a place where he could restrain and physically abuse them. His sexual desires have been described as sadistic. Tens of thousands of dollars had been used to buy the silence of the victims. Thor's first trial ended with a deadlock jury. January 1908 saw the start of his second trial, which continued until February 1st, when he was judged not guilty by reason of insanity. Given a life sentence in the Fishkill, New York-based Madeline State Hospital for the criminally insane. Despite the fact that his exceptional riches gave him access to benefits that regular patients could not after being placed there, his legal team worked to have him declared sane in 1915. A trial was held to ascertain his sanity, and he was declared sane and allowed to return to society. Thor was accused of kidnapping, beating, and sexually abusing Frederick Gump, a 19-year-old, just a year later. Thor tried to kill himself after bribing the Gump family and left Philadelphia. After being committed to a mental hospital once more, he was eventually found to be sane once more and was freed in 1924. In 1947, Thor passed away in Miami, Florida from a heart attack. His age was 76. He was buried in Pittsburgh and left Evelyn the modern equivalent of about $121,000 of his $12 million wealth. Ashley Parlier, after an argument with her parents, Reese and Sherry Parlier, on Sunday, June 12, 2005, Ashley Parlier, then 21 years old, walked out of their Battle Creek home. After a week, Ashley was still missing, so her family submitted a missing persons report. For over a decade, all efforts to locate her have yielded no results. Her family and the police searched desperately for information, and they didn't find anything until 18 years later. Where on earth might Ashley have gone? What, in the end, made it possible for people to learn what had happened to her? Join us as we unravel the mysteries surrounding this unsolved case that took 18 years to resolve. Over 50,000 people live in Battle Creek, Michigan, according to the 2020 census. A close-knit community where residents engage in daring activities and get to know one another by name is fostered by the city's abundance of parks and historic landmarks. Although Battle Creek has a warm and inviting atmosphere, its violent crime rate is much higher than the national norm, raising major concerns about public safety. This circumstance exacerbated the community's anguish over Ashley Parlier's disappearance in 2005, a case that left the community shocked and in search of answers. Ashley Parlier's parents, Russell and Sherry Parlier, were overjoyed when she was born on October 16, 1983. She was the Parlier family's second child. Her early years suggested that she was a shy little girl. This was less a result of her lack of zest for life and more reflection of her innate temperament. Actually, Nicole, Ashley's older sister, used to quip that Ashley had an unwavering faith in humans. Ashley attempted to see the best in everyone. She had dark brown eyes and a grin that showed off her slightly misaligned, but incredibly charming teeth. She genuinely thought that everyone was just as she had imagined. Kind-hearted, Nicole thought back. Ashley never let her modest mental impairment, which would have made her cognitive abilities comparable to those of a 12 to 14-year-old, to dictate how she lived. Her spirit was robust and forceful. After graduating from Battle Creek High School, which is located in the bustling Northeast Capital neighborhood, she got a job at the adjacent Taco Bell. At that moment, her dreams of owning a car started to materialize with every paycheck. She took out a tiny amount of her earnings, daydreaming of the freedom that owning an automobile would bring. Ashley was full of hopes and dreams, but reality had different plans. The unexpected turns of fate lurked in the shadows. And for someone as trusting and good as Ashley, the world was terribly unprepared to repay her kindness. Nobody realized that she was about to experience a tragic ending that would sap her hope for a better future. Ashley Parlier, who was 21 years old, was 5 feet 9 inches tall and had a slender physique. She weighed little under 100 pounds. For someone of her caliber, every bodily alteration of any size had to be noteworthy. This was especially the case for her devoted parents, who spotted a strange lump on their daughter's body on the fateful day of June 12, 2005. Ashley's extraordinary mental capacity and compassionate disposition caused her parents to first worry about her well-being. Their anxieties were heightened by the possible health consequences, and they were keen to have her evaluated. If Ashley were to become pregnant, they felt that prenatal care was essential. Nobody found the realization, the anxieties, or the conversations that followed easy, Ashley least of all. The tension in the urban community of Bedford Township increased after a violent altercation at the Parlier residence. Ashley hurriedly fled the family home because she was upset. She took very little, but she did have roughly $700 in cash. She lacked a phone, credit card, license, and automobile. Her only choice was to use this money. At first, it was thought Ashley had left because she needed a little vacation to calm down. If you can try spending a day or two at a friend's place. The Parlier family hung onto this optimism, but the Parlier family began to feel a rising feeling of dread as the minutes grew into hours and the hours into days. The family's optimism gradually turned to fear. Ashley's family was disturbed by every unanswered phone and unwanted knock on the door, which caused the formerly lively home to become silent. As the days passed and their darkest worries began to come true, the Parlier family was unable to wait any longer. They knew something was really wrong, so they made the decision to report Ashley missing to the police. Anxiety and anguish take the place of their expectations. Investigators immediately began to examine into Ashley Parlier's unexplained disappearance. At first, the evidence seems to be sparse. The public was sent an image of Ashley wearing a checkered blouse, blue trousers, and brown leather sandals in the hopes that someone had heard something or seen something that could lead to her location. Ashley Parlier had a unique and remarkable physical appearance, but what was really concerning was how she felt emotionally before she vanished. Her unintended pregnancy, susceptibility due to her mental state, and the major disagreement she had with her family just before her disappearance all contributed to the case's increasing complexity. Ashley was believed to have been saw multiple times in the Houghton Lake area, which was a good lead. The family's temporary despair was lessened by hopes for her safe return. This brief moment of optimism, though, was short-lived since every sighting that was recorded turned out to be a false lead, frustrating both the family and the investigators. Then, because of the delay in reporting Ashley's disappearance, the investigators concentrated on Sherry and Russell Parlier, Ashley's parents, who she was closest to. Suspicion was directed towards her parents. Russell volunteered to take the polygraph exam, which he passed. Sherry declined, stating that she had health problems. Later on, it was revealed that Sherry was showing early symptoms of Huntington's disease. Nicole, Ashley's sister, noted how out of character Ashley's prolonged absence was and how unusual it was for her to act in this way. The family had just assumed she was cooling off at a friend's house after the violent quarrel and had been waiting for her to come home. They delayed alerting the police because of this stupid assumption, which complicated the investigation. While the investigators tried to get in touch with Ashley's former boyfriend, whose identity hasn't been made public, who was believed to be the father of her unborn kid, the circle of distrust expanded. At the time, he was seeing another woman who was also carrying his child. He had not been cleared, but there was no proof that he was responsible for her abrupt disappearance either. As the detectives continued their investigation, they discovered many leads. There are conjectures that Ashley may have had mental health issues. This led the authorities to look for a body gruesomely in an attempt to locate information that would provide some closure. But they found nothing. Ashley was the victim of a theft, according to another notion, but this was refuted by the fact that her social security number remained the same. As each day passed, the grim reality began to set in. The detectives reluctantly concluded that Ashley might have been a murder victim. They had assumed she was dead. Every year that went by, the Battle Creek Police Department's best efforts to solve the case were less and less successful. Throughout the course of 18 years, numerous officers looked into Ashley's mysterious disappearance. They had a number of people of interest, but none of them had concrete proof against them. The case thus became cold once more. Surprisingly, in 2020, there were rumors that Ashley might have been murdered somewhere other than Battle Creek City, which led to the case being turned over to the sheriff's department. Up until 2021, when an unexpected development reignited the case's hopes of being solved, the mystery seemed to be at a halt, but the hope dimmed with the passing of the years. The trail of leads had become stale, and the once hot case quickly turned into a frozen mystery. Despite the detectives' best efforts, the leads had all but vanished, leaving them in a condition of frigid ambiguity. Again, the inquiry into Ashley Parleur's disappearance had turned up no new clues, no solid evidence, and a ton of unsolved problems. Occasionally, an unexpected burst of information might revive hopes for cracking a long-running mystery inside the intricate network of cold cases. In the Ashley Parleur case, that chance emerged from an unforeseen quarter. Officers were taken aback when they received a call from Calhoun County Law Enforcement in Pennsylvania. In January 2021, it happened that Pennsylvania detectives were questioning Harold David Hallman III, who was 44 years old. Harold was being investigated as a possible serial killer, not just any suspect. This revelation piqued the interest of Ashley's case detectives right away. They questioned such a prominent felon, wondering what information potentially may lead to Ashley's disappearance. Harold David Hallman may not be the first person who quickly comes to mind, but he has a troubled past. Born on November 29, 1978, Harold lived in Germany with his father for a portion of his teenage years. But while his father moved to Turkey, young Harold decided to stay in Germany with a lover. Looks can be deceiving, though on the outside, he seemed to be just another young man. Harold was only 20 when he committed his first known murder. Joseph Whitehurst, a 21-year-old Air Force colonel's son, was his victim. Whitehurst's body was discovered outside Ramstein Air Base. Having been severely beaten with a club, acknowledged killing him on a different accusation while under German prison. It was self-defense, he said. Harold's advanced age and diagnosis of schizophrenia led to a reduced 6-year sentence and a reform school. Harold eventually returned to the United States, where he worked as a truck driver and settled close to Battle Creek Lakeview. Around this period, he became entangled in Ashley Parleur's terrible 2005 disappearance. Years later, on June 13, 2018, Tiana Phillips, a mother of 2, vanished. 3 years later, Harold admitted under questioning that he had no intention of killing Tiana Phillips. All he felt was the one to kill. Next up in 2020 is Erica Schultz, another woman. She vanished on December 6th. Phone records connected Harold to her abduction and murder, and he jokingly likened her murder to an ordinary day at the park. He got hurt while being transported along Pennsylvania railway rails. To Harold, his deeds were sins that needed to be atoned for. In the hospital, he acknowledged that he had killed Phillips and Schultz. He later wrote a letter to his estranged wife while he was incarcerated, detailing his crime against Phillips. This was a cunning attempt to show his wife how devoted he was to her. Interestingly, Harold followed a pattern. After ensuring his victims were unconscious before attacking, he would leave their remains in remote locations. His victims would disappear and suffer concussions. He perpetrated heinous, well-planned crimes. Harold's evil thoughts and deeds had unclear motivations. He was interested in knowing more about serial killers, and had developed sophisticated theories on the nature of power. He believed that there is a distinct power dynamic and partnerships, with one person being the dominating one and the other the submissive one. When his spouse was unable to adopt the submissive role, he searched for that dynamic elsewhere. Harold could recollect every detail of his crimes when pressed. With them, he was very familiar. He admitted that he would kill again if he didn't get arrested. Once Pennsylvania detectives looking into the horrifying murders of 44-year-old serial murderer Harold David Hallman III identified two of the victims, Deanna Phillips and Erica Schultz. They also uncovered another shocking detail regarding Ashley's case. Harold surprised the officers during questioning when he asked to merge the cases of Parlier, Schultz, and Phillips. He wished to escape multiple trials. The mention of Ashley Parlier surprised the detectives. Her case had not come up in their conversation. Their first bewilderment was replaced by a growing curiosity. May know something about Parlier's disappearance. Upon delving deeper into the Parlier case, investigators discovered an astonishing confession. Harold freely acknowledged his interest in murder. All I wanted to do was feel it out. To the detectives, he said, he felt that nothing, not even drugs or activities, could match the sense of taking another person's life. His gruesome curiosity led him to commit his deadly crimes. His statements gave the impression of someone who was mentally ill. The shocking confession was discovered, and the investigators quickly called the Calhoun County Police Department to let them know about it and to provide them an update on the investigation. The police working on Parlier's case were so curious to get additional information from Harold that they proceeded to question him straight away. Their follow-up questions confirmed Harold's relationship with Ashley Parlier. Based on available records, Harold resided in Battle Creek between 2002 and 2009, during which he maintained contact with the little girl who went missing. After conducting additional research, the cops assembled a terrifying timeline. After a fight at her house, Ashley had gone to Emmett Township, Michigan to stay with Harold. She informed him of her pregnancy as well as the concerns of her family. Sadly, this visit ended in tragedy. After a furious fight between the two, he began to attack Ashley. Soon after, he whisked her away to the tranquil, remote hills of Pennsylvania. That's where he then killed her. In some respects, Harold's admission provided closure, even though it also made the tragedy worse. He recalled abandoning Ashley's body in the northern part of Newton Township and discarding his blood-stained clothes. While the questions were being asked, Harold elaborated on his acquaintance with Ashley Parlier. It was evident from his statement that they had first connected at a gathering that her parents had attended. They had a talk as a result of their fortuitous meeting, which paved the way for their eventual closer friendship. He also detailed the events leading up to Ashley's argument with her parents on that pivotal day. Ashley had gotten in touch with him because he seemed like someone she had trusted, not because he had any prearranged intentions. Ashley told Harold about the pressure from her parents to get a pregnancy test when she saw him. The investigators were startled when Harold revealed that he was Ashley's inborn child's father. Nevertheless, things were heated once Ashley revealed that she might be pregnant. And on June 13, 2005, the two got into an argument. Harold went off the deep end during their disagreement. Ashley was knocked unconscious by his violent strikes. Then he drove her to a secluded location, which he described as an overgrown field in Michigan, about 10 miles outside of the town center. This remote spot with a garage or possibly an abandoned house nearby was the backdrop for a gloomy tale. Harold remembered the peaceful surroundings and Ashley's still corpse in the back of the automobile, creating an eerie feeling. He had the notion that here was the ideal place to take Ashley's life abruptly, and the fact that no automobiles were passing verified this. He related the story of how after removing Ashley from the car, he killed her out of wrath so that she would never again be able to live on Earth. Harold then departed for his home and took out all of the proof. Later, at the renowned American supermarket, Meijer, where he worked at the time, he disposed of his bleeding clothes. Harold was uncomfortably still interested with Ashley's case after that. He admitted that he had visited the site years later and discovered Ashley's skeletal bones. His apologies to the Parlier family came after his admission of all the crimes he had perpetrated. He hated Ashley's murder the most, expressing regret for its commission. The police work in the Ashley Parlier case was nothing short of extraordinary. They persisted in their search for information and leads for nearly 20 years in an effort to reunite Ashley with her family in spite of the numerous challenges presented by the case. So when the confession of Harold Holman emerged, the authorities were encouraged to confirm his claim. They asked him to pinpoint the exact spot where he had left Ashley's remains for the cops and the prosecution. This was not simply any other case. It required a great deal of time and resources. Many detectives who have been dedicated to discovering Ashley's true story have been involved in the investigation over the years. When the leads from within the city dried up, they expanded their search far beyond its borders. They made contact with possible witnesses and searched a variety of locations across the nation, including California, Maryland, and Pennsylvania for any leads. The formidable investigating team included Detective Sergeant Chris Suarez of the Michigan State Police, Detective Dave Haminga, and Detective John Pignataro of the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department. With perseverance and teamwork, they finally reached a wooded location 1.5 miles down a 6.5-mile road in Newton Township, south of Battle Creek. There was a lot of searching going on March 30th, 2022 for hours. Over 24 police officers combed the neighborhood in an attempt to locate Ashley. However, they were not successful. Another layer of intricacy was that according to locals, Ashley's absence had left the environment substantially altered. Over the years, other owners had purchased and split up what had previously been farmland. Even with the search narrowed down and Harold's admission filled with hope, a major roadblock appeared. After all these years, Harold could barely recall the exact place he left Ashley. The landscape had changed over the years due to development, and he had trouble finding the spot. Even if there are no remains to be found, the search for Ashley goes on. In the hopes that the day will arrive, the police are totally dedicated to cracking this terrible case. Harold Holman's trial in relation to Parlier's case proceeded pretty smoothly given the scope of such investigations. It's important to keep in mind that by the time Harold went on trial, he had already been convicted guilty of the deaths of 2 other women. This appalling record hindered the proceedings. Despite his past crimes, Harold's genuine fear of the death penalty was unexpected to hear. He had been held at the Luzerne County Jail prior to the trial. In February 2023, he made a prudent legal decision by entering a guilty plea to Ashley Parlier's second-degree murder. He accepted the plea as a condition of an agreement with the Luzerne County District Attorney's Office. He had given his permission to assist the Calhoun County authorities in locating Ashley's body. Agreed to assist in the search for Ashley's remains by the Calhoun County authorities, he would be released from the immediate threat of the death penalty in return. During the trial, the prosecution and defense each made their cases. The severity of Harold's offenses was underlined by the prosecution, especially in view of his previous convictions. Harold's defense most likely concentrated on his plea deal and his cooperation with the police. But the most expected testimony was, in a sense, Harold's own. His previous confession was thoroughly investigated, and its relevance was evident, even if no new testimony was mentioned. The end was bound to come. There would be no chance of release for Harold, the guy who had slain several people. Rather, he would serve 2 life terms in addition to a life sentence. Harold seems to be nearing the end of his legal adventure, but Ashley's case remains unresolved. The Calhoun County Sheriff's Office is continuously searching for any information that might point to Ashley's remains being found. If anyone knows anything about the case, they can get in touch with the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office directly at 269-781-0880. Their commitment to obtaining the necessary information hasn't changed. The case affected Ashley Parlier's family for nearly 20 years. Her parents, Sherry and Russell, sadly died in 2020, leaving them to never know what had happened to their daughter. Ashley's sister Nicole was becoming more and more ill. She learned that after Ashley had taken refuge with Harold, he had betrayed her. Nicole was clearly distraught. Reflecting on the sorrow and mistrust that surrounded her family 18 years ago, she lamented that her parents were unable to hear this. Nicole became friends with the victim's sisters. Standing together in unity, they focused on remembering their loved ones rather than the guy who had stolen them away, expressing their shared anguish. In an interview, Nicole adamantly declared, "We're going to remember how good they were." The family is aware of the tragic truth and has found closure, even though they are still searching for Ashley's remains. What might have driven Harold to commit such a heinous act? And how did he manage to stay afloat for so long? Share your thoughts with us by leaving a comment. James Joseph Richardson, Farm laborer James Joseph Richardson was employed in the small southern Florida hamlet of Arcadia, where he cared for an orange plantation. Together with his wife, Annie Mae Richardson, he had 5 children. The 7 children, ages 2 to 8, were raised by Annie and her 2 children from her previous marriage. Bessie Rees, a neighbor, watched the kids while James and Annie worked because they were both full-time employees. The 3 youngest children remained with Bessie on October 25, 1967, while the 4 older children went to school. The 4 kids came home from school at lunchtime to join Bessie and their siblings for lunch. Their mother had made them a breakfast of rice and beans early that morning. Teachers at the school saw that the children were exhibiting odd symptoms, and the administrator rushed them to the hospital right away. When one of the instructors went to check on the 3 kids at home, she discovered that they were also sick and they were sent to the hospital. Only one of James and Annie's children was sick and a parent needed to accompany them to the hospital. They were informed 6 of the 7 children had passed away by the time they got to the hospital. Next day, the 7th child would pass away. It was thought that the poisoning caused the deaths of all the youngsters. The Richardson residence was promptly examined by the authorities in an effort to find any evidence connected to the children's deaths. The police conducted extensive searching, but they were unable to uncover anything that would have suggested a poison, with the exception of an insect spray, which they did not think was the source of the kids' poisoning. The following day, Bessie called the police to report that her neighbor Charlie Smith had found a bag of the pesticide parathion in a shed. The cops concurred that after 5 searches of the property the day before, the parathion bag had not been found. They reasoned that the individual who had poisoned the kids was most likely the same one who had hidden the parathion sack. Tests conducted later on the kids' lunch plates and other cooking utensils showed that there was enough parathion in them to kill a whole city's worth of people. James was charged with 7 first-degree murder counts by investigator Klein 2 days after the children's funeral. Bessie was not looked into as a suspect, even though she was the last to handle the plates and food before the kids ate it. Some thought Klein was just trying to get noticed by the police department by seeking for a big break. Although it was never established, Klein claimed throughout the trial that James had 5 other children who had passed away in another Florida city under suspicious circumstances, and that his goal in committing this murder was to get the insurance money for the deceased children. The judge presented evidence of lie detector tests that both Annie Mae and James had taken, indicating that James was aware of the poisoning. After expressing interest in Richardson's case, John Robinson of Daytona Beach and his associate decided to provide pro bono legal representation to the lawyerless Richardson because the judge insisted that Richardson was guilty all the time. John thought the case was being handled unfairly. James told John that when he was being held at the county prison, Officer Klein had called him names and advised him to enter a guilty plea in order to receive a less term. Following the discovery of no evidence suggesting James' guilt, John was able to reduce James' bail from $100,000 to $75,100. James was given a bail and let free. However, not long after James was freed, an inmate who was being prosecuted for a crime said that James had told him in the county jail that he had killed the kids. James' bail was revoked, and 2 other inmates who were being prosecuted soon after declared that James had also confessed to them. John tried to get the trial moved to a different, more equitable county, but James was detained once more and his trial was shifted to a different county. 2 of the jailhouse informants testified throughout the trial regarding what James reportedly told them. Because of their testimony, the sentences of the 2 informants were shortened. The jury was read the statement of the 3rd informant, who had been shot dead before the trial. After less than 2 hours of deliberation on May 31, 1968, James was found guilty and given a death sentence in Florida's electric chair. Before the U.S. Supreme Court declared in 1972 that the capital penalty in the U.S. at the time was unconstitutional, James spent over 5 years on death row. In 1993, he was sentenced to life in jail with the possibility of release. James's solicitors were successful in getting him a fresh trial in 1988. Bessie Rees allegedly confessed to the murders 100 times while residing in an assisted living facility. But because of her mental health issues, no one ever took her seriously. According to the attorneys, Bessie Rees was discovered to be a convicted killer as well. At the time of the children's killings, She was on parole and had reportedly used poison to kill her ex-husband. There was proof of a cover-up by the local judge, State Attorney Frank Schwab and Sheriff Frank Klein, which they all denied. In addition, the lone surviving jailhouse informant changed his narrative, claiming he was given a reduced term in exchange for his testimony. James was released from prison on April 25, 1989, after a judge overturned his conviction on the grounds that the evidence had been withheld, preventing him from providing a fair trial. Bessie passed away from Alzheimer's in 1992 without facing any legal repercussions for the incident. James later sued DeSoto County for false convictions, and the case was settled for $150,000. Governor Rick Scott of Florida enacted a bill in June 2014, allowing James to receive compensation for his unjust conviction of more than $1 million. Moving on to the next case. Erica Green. Police were looking for an elderly man who had been reported missing by his buddy on the evening of April 28, 2001 in the woodland area of Hibbs Park, 59th Street near Kensington Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri. However, they were unable to locate the man and instead came upon the horrifying discovery of a toddler's headless body in the woods. A plastic bag containing the missing child's hat was discovered on May 1, 2001, approximately 200 yards away from the location of her severed head. Nobody had filed a missing child report, and the youngster's head had become unrecognizable. Precious Doe was the name the police gave her because they didn't know who she was. There are still a lot of uncertainties about this revelation. Who was this young person? Why had her death been handled so gruesomely? So let's go right into this mystery without further ado. Kansas City, Missouri, is renowned for its expansive grasslands, undulating hills, and breathtaking scenery. Numerous cultural attractions, such as museums and art galleries, are abundant in Kansas, with more than 20 official wildflower trails spread over the state's rural and urban areas. It is aptly known as the Sunflower State. One of the cities in America with a high crime rate is Kansas City, which has a population of over 500,000, and a high violent crime rate of 57 per 1,000 persons. And this city is where our narrative starts. In order to pick up Erica for a family gathering, Michelle and Harold returned to Betty's residence on April 4, 2001. Easter was quickly approaching, so Betty prepared Erica to spend the holiday with her and was hesitant to let go of the little girl because of how much she loved her. But since Michelle was the biological mother, Betty was at a loss for options. Betty packed up Erica's belongings, which included her new outfits that she bought for Easter and her favorite doll. Unaware that it would be her last encounter with Erica, she said goodbye to her. It is likely that Harold and Michelle decided to bring the youngest of their children to Kansas City, Missouri, because Harold had children of his own before they met. Harold abducted Markeisha Johnson, his 6-month-old child. For various circumstances, they did not move to Kansas City with all of their kids. First, LaWanda Driscoll, Harold's cousin, owned the flat in Kansas. Second, Michelle had already moved her other 4 children to another location. After a few weeks, Harold's cousin LaWanda Driscoll realized that Erica had vanished from her life. Inquiring about Erica's whereabouts, Michelle informed LaWanda that Betty Brown had traveled from Oklahoma to pick Erica up. An unidentified individual called the police on the evening of April 28, 2001, claiming to have been attempting to contact his friend for some time, but not being able to. He requested assistance from the police and doing a welfare check on his friend, which the officers provided. However, after failing to locate the man at his home, they were forced to search the forested area close to Hibbs Park, located at 59th Street and Kensington Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. The police received a call informing them that the individual they were seeking for had been located after some time of searching. But just as they were ready to depart, they came upon a horrifying scene. It was a toddler's severed body. The body was found naked. Therefore, the authorities quickly concluded that it belonged to a female toddler. The discovery was viewed suspiciously by the police right away. They questioned why the body of a toddler would be found in the woods, and why no one had gone missing in the vicinity of the youngster of that age. The investigators encountered an impasse. There was absolutely no way the investigation could proceed without the head of the body. They were only able to ascertain the child's age and gender. They discovered that the dead body belonged to a black girl who was probably between 3 and 6 years old, and that she had suffered abuse prior to her murder, about 200 yards from where the child's body was recovered. On May 1, 2001, 3 days after it was discovered, a volunteer searcher discovered the child's head wrapped in a plastic bag. An ashtray that the police thought to be the murder weapon was found next to the body. However, the head was so badly decayed that the authorities were unable to identify the owner of the body even after it was discovered. The victim's age and the brutality of the murder quickly brought the case to the attention of the country. The investigators kept looking, hoping that the child's parent or guardian would show up to claim her body, but they got no response. The victim was given the nickname Precious Doe when it was determined who they were. Before long, a large number of people offered their time to help publicize Precious Doe by distributing leaflets, asking inquiries at door, and using radio, television, and newspapers to uncover further information about the victim's identity. The case was frequently highlighted on cold case files and America's Most Wanted lists in an attempt to identify the young child. However, despite everything, no one claimed the infant and no witnesses came forward. Public donations helped fund Precious Doe's funeral, which took place in December 2001 at Hibbs Park, not far from where her body was discovered. There were hundreds of individuals present and the locals turned out in large numbers. But despite all the attention the case received, nobody knew for sure who Precious Doe was. To do an autopsy, the police dug up Precious Doe's remains in 2002, and the outcome demonstrates that, before to her murder, she had been severely beaten with an ashtray and mistreated. Nothing was discovered in the ashtray when police examined it for fingerprints and DNA. Researchers examined Precious Doe's skull in July 2003, and also constructed a bust depicting her possible appearance. The case was so well known that the authorities were inundated with tips, some from close friends and family and others from a great distance. The police were called about the case by Jamaica at one point, but they discovered it had nothing to do with Precious Doe's identification. Soon, the public lost hope as the police were preoccupied with other cases. However, Alonzo Washington, a strong advocate for Precious Doe's case, never gave up on finding the truth. Every year, Alonzo placed advertisements regarding the case in a local newspaper. Because the victim was a Black American, Alonzo had the idea to publish the advertisement in an African American newspaper during Precious Doe's 4th-year commemoration in April 2005. He also designed T-shirts featuring a bust image of Precious Doe, and that turned into the pivotal moment the case required. A man calling Alonzo on April 30th, 2005 said his name was Thurman McIntosh. This man turned out to be Harold Johnson's father. Alonzo, assuming he was an expert on the Precious Doe case, paid attention to Thurman's 81-year-old statement asserting that Erica Green was Precious Doe. In addition, he stated that Erica Green was slain by his son, Harold Johnson. Thurman was asked by Alonzo why he hadn't revealed the information since 2001, and had only done it in 2005. Thurman said that every time he called the police to provide information about the case, they fired him. Then Thurman was pushed by Alonzo to obtain him a photo of Erica and a lock of Michelle's hair. As soon as Thurman sent Alonzo a hair sample, he forwarded it to Detective David Bernard, who was in charge of the case involving the prize doe. Thurman was hauled in to be questioned on May 4, 2005. There, he explained to the investigators his conviction that his son was the one who had done it. After Erica vanished from Thurman's sight, he asked Harold and Michelle where she was, to which they both replied that she was in Oklahoma with Betty. Suddenly, Thurman claimed he felt Precious Doe was actually Erica Green while the couple and Markeisha were returning to Oklahoma. When Thurman confronted Harold and revealed to him that he had killed Erica, Harold said it was an error. Thurman claimed he wanted to reveal Precious Doe's final fate to the world as soon as he found out the truth. Thurman sent over a photo of one of Erica's cousins, but the hair exactly matched Precious Doe's. Precious Doe was finally able to be identified by the police as Erica Green. On May 15, 1997, Erica Green was born in McLeod, Oklahoma, in the United States. She was the youngest of 5 children born to her father, Larry Green, and mother, Michelle Johnson. Michelle was found guilty of stealing goods from a store when she was 8 months pregnant. The Oklahoma Department of Corrections sentenced her to 2 years in prison, but due of her pregnancy, she was kept at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center. When Michelle went into labor, she had only completed 1 month of her sentence. After being brought to Oklahoma City's OU Medical Center, she gave birth to Erica Green there. She was urged to get in touch with a guardian who would help her hold Erica until she was released, because she was unable to care for Erica. In order to find a guardian for their child, Erica's father, Larry Green, was approached by Michelle. Then Larry would give a call to Betty Brown, a friend of Larry's mother who was in her late 60s. When Betty arrived at the prison, she was given several tasks to complete in order to be granted custody of Erica, to determine if Betty was qualified to have care of the child. The authorities at the correctional facility did not run a background investigation. All she had to offer was her driver's license and a Sam's Club card, a paperwork needed to be signed by her. On May 16, 1997, after this was completed, Betty was given custody of Erica Green. Betty characterized Erica as one of the most independent children she had ever encountered, and she loved and cared for her as if she were her own. She added that Erica was a beautiful girl with a constant smile. People adored her whenever she brought Erica along to church. On October 23, 1997, Michelle was then granted a probationary release. Michelle only occasionally went to see Betty Brown to see how her child was doing, which suggested to Betty that she wasn't all that concerned in looking after Erica. By the time Erica turned 3 years old in 2000, Michelle had moved on to Harold Johnson, her future husband, whom she married in 2002. Harold Johnson invited Michelle to live with him soon after at his Oklahoma home. Following confirmation that Erica's body belonged to her, the police searched for her mother, Michelle, and her partner, Harold. Harold and Michelle were at the Muskogee County Jail in Oklahoma after being detained on several warrants. The police did not hesitate to act. They went straight to the facility to question Harold Johnson and Michelle. The first person to be questioned was Michelle. Michelle recognized her daughter Erica from the photo the police showed her during the interrogation, and she also pinned a note on the reverse. "I'm sorry, Mama." She wrote, "My heart and soul will always be with you. I'll always love you. Tiny E." She consented to tell the police how the murder occurred after completing that. Michelle claims that after the family got home in the evening of April 2001 at around 8 o'clock, Harold quickly started to get drunk and high on PCP. While Michelle went to the loo, she gave the order for Erica, who shared a room with Harold, to go to bed. Harold started complaining about Erica being naughty before she even finished her shower because she wouldn't go to bed. Harold got upset after telling Erica to go to bed 5 or 6 times. Erica was already out of bed when Michelle emerged from the loo. Then she told Erica to get back in bed, but Erica didn't move. Harold kicked Erica till she passed out at that moment. Michelle claimed that even though she hurried to get Erica and put her in a chilly water, Erica refused to awaken. Michelle realized then that something grave had occurred. After roughly 15 minutes, Erica was still asleep and unresponsive when Michelle carried her to the toilet and lay her on the floor. At that moment, Erica was in need of medical attention, but Harold and Michelle chose not to seek it because they still had outstanding warrants. Even though Michelle realized Erica could not survive, she agreed not to call for help because she didn't want to go to jail. Erica remained unconscious for 10 to 14 hours and she had passed away by the next morning. Harold and Michelle concealed Erica's body in a pram after she passed away. Michelle claims that because they were both terrified and unsure of what to do, they ultimately decided to dispose of the body. They both took Erica's body outside through the house window and headed directly into the woods, waiting for darkness to ensure they were unobserved. Harold considered using edge clippers to remove the head and disfigure it in order to make identification difficult, since he worried that keeping the body as it was may eventually lead the police to their home. The head was wrapped in plastic bags before being thrown in a skip at a local church. However, Michelle didn't think that was a smart idea. Harold was instructed to remove the head by her since the smell could alert the church's owners. Harold threw the head in Hibbs Park's forested section following his wife's advice. After removing Erica's clothing from her body and giving them to Michelle, Harold left her body in the woods. The two of them went back to their house and entered the room by the same exit. LaWanda Driscoll would soon discover Erica was missing, even if no one witnessed what they did. Michelle lied to Mom when she was asked where she was, saying she was lying in the room because she was sick. Michelle wanted the cops to take her to meet Harold after giving her version of events. She encouraged Harold to confess to his crimes, telling him that she had already done so. Michelle was first outraged with Harold and pleaded with her to retract her testimony, but she had already made up her mind to testify against him in court. Harold afterwards consented to give an oral testimony in which he detailed the manner in which he killed Erica and took her head. He took a picture of Erica while he was being questioned, and he placed a statement underneath it saying, "I'm so sorry that this happened, and I hope that you forgive me for what I have done, and my heart and soul will always love you. Harold Johnson, I shall always miss you." Numerous individuals who exerted great effort to secure justice for Erica found comfort in the charging of the offenders in this case. The public made the decision to bury Erica properly under her true name on August 2005. Unfortunately, Erica's father, Larry Green, was incarcerated at the time. Alvin Brooks, a councilman for Kansas City, said that he and others attempted, but were unable, to obtain authorization from Larry Green to attend the funeral of his daughter. Despite the fact that Erica's family was not present at her funeral, she will always be joyful since so many people worked to secure justice for her. LaWanda Driscoll shared her story of her knowledge of the situation as well. She claimed that Harold had been abusing Erica in the days leading up to her death. LaWanda claimed that Erica's scream from the bedroom was the last thing she heard from her. LaWanda claimed that because Erica was not accustomed to living with her mother and stepfather, she wept a lot, and that this caused Harold to hit her even more. Harold would be Erica for everything, no matter how insignificant, she added. LaWanda reported that she overheard Harold saying, "Michelle, I'm going to do something bad, so go take care of your daughter." She now feels the big bang coming from the bedroom a week or so later was the kick that knocked Erica out. Michelle assisted with handing out posters and even shed tears during the girls' vigil. According to LaWanda, when everyone was searching for Precious Doe's identification, LaWanda claims that Michelle was always willing to respond to inquiries about Erica. Harold and Michelle were accused of killing Erica Green on May 5, 2005, putting a child's well-being in peril, leaving a corpse unattended and tampering with tangible evidence. Michelle was not put on trial until 2007, at which point she entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder and other associated offenses, receiving a 25-year jail sentence. Harold began saying things that would implicate Michelle as soon as he learned that she would be testifying against him. He said that Michelle had never really given Erica any thought. He claimed that on occasion, Michelle would leave Erica alone to go do drugs. But the investigators are already aware of everything he claimed. Harold remained untried until 2008. First-degree murder would not have been the cause of Erica's death, even if her autopsy revealed that she had a closed head injury, a condition that happens when the head strikes an object. However, the neurologist stated in court that if Erica had gotten care in the final hours of her life, she might have lived. Following many days of deliberation, the jury convicted Harold guilty of first-degree murder, child abuse, and endangering the welfare of a child. Harold was given a life sentence without the possibility of release in November 2008. Harold filed an appeal, maintaining his denial that he is the person the state said he is. The state attorney and the defense lawyer exchanged arguments during which Harold's side maintained that the murder was not planned. But according to the state, Erica's murder was planned. Michelle disclosed during her confession that she had instructed Harold to direct Erica exclusively to Markesia and not to order Erica about the night of Erica's death. According to the state, Harold became irritated by Michelle's statement and considered killing Erica at that very moment. Furthermore, the autopsy reveals that Erica was kicked several times, indicating that Harold continued to kick the young child on purpose while being aware that she might not survive. Harold's decision to appeal the verdict, according to Judge John Torrance, was not indicative of regret. The judge dismissed Harold's appeal, calling him a textbook sociopath who refuses to accept responsibility for his conduct and asserting that the murder was not premeditated. Many were relieved by Erica's sentence, even though the revelation of her identity provided comfort to those who had been rooting for her. Everyone in attendance during Erica's sentence was happy with Harold's decision. However, several others wanted Michelle to receive the same punishment. In addition, Erica's biological father, Larry Green, sued the Oklahoma D.C., raising concerns about the procedures used to decide who gets custody of children born to jailed moms. Nonetheless, the Department of Corrections and the Department of Human Services decided to implement new protocols to guarantee that infants delivered to prisoners will be submitted to the Human Services Department for appropriate treatment. The tragedy of Erica Green serves as a warning that evil exists in human hearts. While it is common knowledge that parents treasure and constantly guard their children, it is horrifying and depressing to learn that some parents would rather preserve themselves than risk anything bad happening to their offspring. Many of the people who are aware of Erica's case have opinions regarding the sentence. Do you also believe that given Michelle was the biological mother, she ought to have received a harsher sentence? Tell us in the space provided for comments. Felicia McGuire on October 7, 2007, 32-year-old Felicia McGuire disappeared, leaving her friends and family in shock. The last place witnesses saw her alive was in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. The police conducted extensive investigations and large-scale searches. She was never found, though. Her disappearance occurred under odd circumstances, and the police were notified of suspicious activities involving a person of interest. However, the investigation was quickly concluded, leaving Felicia's loved ones without any closure. Welcome back to Mystery Detective, the place where mysteries remain unanswered. We want to look at Felicia McGuire's mysterious disappearance today. It took 15 years for this case to be resolved, and justice was finally served in 2023. Before we go any further, if you're new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, do so. Your support will motivate us to keep creating films for you like this one. That stated, without further ado, let's get straight into this mystery. The southern part of the city is home to the Dorchester neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts. Almost 6 square miles make up the entire land area, making it the largest neighborhood in Boston. In Dorchester, there are more than 90,000 residents of many ethnic backgrounds, such as African Americans, Vietnamese Americans, Caribbean Americans, and Irish Americans. The Boston neighborhood of Dorchester is now growing quickly due to new residential and commercial building. This is the region in which the case under review occurs. Felicia McGuire was born in the charming city of Dorchester in 1975. It is unknown who her father is, although Sharon McGuire was her mother when she was growing up. Felicia grew up in a happy, loving, and humorous home during her early years. In 1997, she gave birth to her lone child, Nicholas Fahey. Nicholas became the center of her existence with the birth of her son. Nicholas's father's identity and the circumstances surrounding his death were unclear. Felicia was never away from Dorchester. Despite the challenges and setbacks life threw at her, she stayed there with her beloved kid and her mother, creating a happy and caring household. Felicia had a romantic involvement with a man named David Pena over time. She and him were also housemates. Felicia was a single parent, but it didn't stop her from being devoted to her child's well-being. She worked non-stop to provide her child with the best life imaginable. She went above and above to provide her son the support and care he needed. Felicia McGuire was a selfless and caring mother who put her child's needs ahead of her own. The difficulties in life never broke her spirit. Unfortunately, on October 7, 2007, Felicia McGuire vanished without a trace, ending her mother's hopes and dreams of seeing her kids succeed and become a wonderful member of society. The 32-year-old loving mother was last observed in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, where she resided. She was last seen on Rixton Street going about her business, but no one knows what happened to her. Felicia's mother, Sharon, was horrified to learn that her daughter had vanished, and things got worse when it became unclear where Felicia was. She searched through phone books and any possible contact she could think of, but her efforts were in vain. Felicia's friends and family worried more and more as the days went by because she never spoke with them. On October 18, 2007, after a 10-day period, Sharon McGuire formally reported her daughter missing. Her disappearance prompted the Boston Police Department to launch an inquiry right away. They quickly discovered that Felicia had stopped talking to her cherished son and other family members, and that her behavior was abnormal. This made others wonder if she had been the victim of a horrific crime. Felicia's family was quite worried about her safety and well-being, because it was not in her nature to disappear without anyone. They pondered what had happened to her and where she could be. The residual uncertainty concerning her destiny had to be faced by her son and family. Law enforcement officials worked very hard as the inquiry went on to try to uncover any information that would lead them to the answer. To put together a timeline of Felicia's last known movements, police spoke with neighbors, acquaintances, and family members. The neighborhood, including any nearby woods and bodies of water, was thoroughly searched in an attempt to locate the missing woman. As the days grew into weeks and those weeks into months, Felicia's family grew increasingly concerned. Their constant concern was the whereabouts of their beloved mother and daughter. Her disappearance also disturbed the Boston Police Department. In November 2013, they shared images of Felicia McGuire on social media in an attempt to gather any information that might help return her home safely due to the lack of information. In the social media posts, they provided a detailed description of her. The police highlighted her personal attributes such as her height, weight, hair color, and eye color, and expressed serious concerns for her safety and well-being. Felicia was a beautiful woman with piercing, vibrant eyes, and chestnut brown hair. She had a medium frame, weighing about 140 pounds, and stood slender at 5 feet, 2 inches. Felicia had been absent for over 6 arduous years, and the mystery surrounding her disappearance became more intricate with every passing day. Her body had never been found, even after a great deal of time and money had been spent looking for leads. Nevertheless, a number of witnesses' accounts of Felicia's disappearance remained doubtful after the 2013 Facebook post. The police were informed by an unidentified witness that David Pina, Felicia McGuire's live-in lover, showed up at his door early on October 7, 2007, seeking for a trip to his mother's Devon Street home. The witness claimed to have lived below Pina and Felicia's flat. Blood on his clothes was observed by the neighbor. However, Pina had stated at the time that Felicia had stabbed him with scissors. Still, the blood on Pina's shirt hinted at much more horrific events. The witness stated that Pina told him that he had violently shoved Felicia against the wall during their altercation, causing her head to hit the bed or dresser. Subsequently, Pina expressed uncertainty about her survival and appeared indifferent to her destiny. Pina was still being observed by the witness. He said that Pina had swelling in her right hand as well. Pina replied that Felicia had struck him with a baseball bat when asked why. A few days later, 2 other witnesses claimed to have seen Pina come back to the flat that same evening. They said that that day, about 3 or 4 in the morning, Payne came home with another man and went upstairs. They reappeared after a while, hauling down the stairs a blanket that might have held Felicia McGuire's body. When the 2 witnesses tried to help, they were ordered to mind their own business and turned away. To further cloud the picture, a second witness stated that in 2007, he had lent Pena his 2005 Chevy Impala in return for drugs, and that year he had returned it with the back seat completely cleaned and broken. These unsettling clues cast doubt on what truly happened to Felicia McGuire and prompted the authorities to suspect David Pena as the investigation progressed. Investigators questioned David Pena about the matter right away. They also learned that he and Felicia had a turbulent past. Pena informed detectives that, during Felicia McGuire's disappearance, he was her live-in lover, and that their relationship was anything from simple. The police questioned Pena since he had previously told the first witness who had called in that he and Felicia had gotten into a violent brawl at their flat. Then he acknowledged that Felicia had stabbed him in the shoulder when she assaulted him with a pair of scissors. In response, Pena fled the flat to seek refuge at his mother's place. However, upon returning a few days later, he discovered something unexpected. Felicia was gone and her possessions had been pilfered. Because Pena did not provide any damning statements and there was no evidence against him during the interrogation, the detectives were compelled to release Pena. After that, Felicia's death inquiry became a tortuous trip with many twists and turns that ultimately led to every conceivable dead end. Every lead was followed up on. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized. Yet the case got colder by the day. Felicia's friends and family were in unbearable pain and were in desperate need of an explanation for her disappearance. The beloved mother, Felicia McGuire, vanished in 2007, and her whereabouts have been the subject of speculation and rumors for years. New optimism was sparked in 2017 when the FBI searched a highly forested region of West Roxbury. Days of covert investigation were followed by no information being given to the media, leaving people to wonder what had led the officials to that spot. In the end, the truth was revealed. In fact, the search was connected to Felicia's disappearance, and the investigation was a crucial step in the lengthy process of discovering the truth. During the search, a witness came forward and shockingly revealed to the detectives that in 2007, David Pena had asked for help getting things out of his flat, including a bulky rolled-up carpet. He continued by saying that before sped off, Pena and his accomplice had put Felicia's body in the trunk of a car. This was witnessed by someone who said that he suspected right away that a body was wrapped in the blanket and carpet. Sadly, his presumptions were correct. Pena was eventually able to bring Felicia's body into a wooded location with a parking lot, where they dumped Felicia's body with the witnesses' help. The only thing standing in the way of the investigators finishing the case was locating Felicia's body's disposal site. Nevertheless, despite multiple leads and witnesses, the answer to this seemed to be a mystery that would never be solved. The witness left the area before finding out what had happened to her remains. The witness's lack of knowledge of Boston made matters worse, since she was unable to provide any ideas as to where the body might have been disposed of. McGuire's family and loved ones had been given a frustratingly inadequate picture of the crime, and the prosecutor was unable to bring them closure. A few years later, on January 14, 2023, David Pena was apprehended at the Baker County Detention Center in Florida by the Boston Police Department's fugitive team. Pena had an outstanding warrant from Suffolk Superior Court for cocaine trafficking, and he was wanted by Dorchester District Court on a murder charge pertaining to Felicia's case. More than 15 years ago, Felicia vanished from Roxton Street in Dorchester, leaving her little boy behind. Because of Pena's arrest, her family and friends who have been searching for her for a long time might now finally have some answers. Pena appeared in court on February 15, 2023 to be arraigned on the charges brought against him. The case has garnered national attention after more than 15 years of uncertainty and suffering, and this most recent breakthrough has reignited hopes of finding Felicia's remains. There is now some hope for Felicia McGuire's family. Police have grounds to think that her remains are still someplace in the Boston area, even though her corpse was never found. With the announcement of an arrest, an investigation that had been unresolved for some time has now received some closure. Though it was unable to bring their beloved Felicia back, Felicia's family and friends may finally rest easy knowing that someone will be held accountable for her terrible abduction. Eventually, we trust justice shall be served. Pena is due to appear in court and is probably going to stand trial shortly. During this difficult time, our condolences and thoughts are with Felicia's friends and family. We can only pray that they find some comfort and peace as they continue to heal from this unfathomable catastrophe. Sabrina Underwood, nestled in the northwestern Arkansas Ozark Mountains, Huntsville, Arkansas, was a small, tight-knit rural town in the 1990s. The town was a place where community ties were strong and life proceeded at a slower pace compared to larger urban regions. Its character was profoundly anchored in its historical and agricultural traditions. Throughout the 1990s, Huntsville's community life was characterized by a strong sense of solidarity. Locals were frequently acquainted, and the town's social fabric was knitted by a variety of neighborhood activities. Every year, the people of Huntsville eagerly anticipated the town fairs, parades, and festivals. These events gave participants a chance to socialize and cement their ties to the community in addition to offering entertainment. This rustic setting served as the setting for the tragic story of Sabrina Underwood. On January 20th, 1991, Sabrina Underwood, then 19 years old, vanished from sight after her mother, let her off at the U.S. Highway 41262 in Boone County, close to Bear Creek. At the time, Sabrina was traveling to Calico Rock to see her boyfriend who was serving time in jail. The neighborhood was shocked by Sabrina's abduction, and her mother never saw her again. There were months of tense anticipation after Sabrina vanished. Then, on April 8, 1991, a somber finding stunned the town. A hunter discovered human remains close to the Gum Spring Cemetery, northwest of Little Rock, along with hair, underwear, and an ear stud. It was determined that the bones belonged to Sabrina Underwood, whose destiny was very different from what she had intended to accomplish. The cause of Sabrina's death was initially ruled as unknown, which sparked a laborious and devastating investigation. Law enforcement agents put in a great deal of effort in interviewing suspects, following up on leads, and trying to piece together the details of her case. Their diligent work went unrewarded as the case eventually fizzled out, leaving Huntsville under a cloud of unanswered mystery for years to come. The darkness would not lift for over 30 years. A crucial tip surfaced in July 2022, launching the probe once more. A startling and unsettling confession letter was in the possession of a local lawyer whose client was serving time in an Arkansas state prison. When his estranged wife, Kirsty Headley, was killed in 2018, the client, Rick Allen Headley, was already serving a life sentence. The confession letter gave the long-abandoned case new life by revealing graphic details of Sabrina Underwood's terrible demise. Rick Allen Headley was questioned by detectives right away regarding the contents of the confession letter. His shocking information would throw light on the horrific crime that had been hidden for almost 30 years. Headley confessed to the crime, and his account read like a terrifying story that had come to pass in the sleepy town of Huntsville. Headley's admission, according to the affidavit, gave a bleak impression of Sabrina's last moments. At a gas stop, he said, Sabrina approached him and asked for a ride. Hadley would be plagued by the events of that ride for years to come. In a startling change of events, Sabrina approached Hadley and startlingly demanded money, threatening to harm him if he rejected her advances. Hadley told a terrifying story of the events leading up to Sabrina's terrible end. Following their sexual session in his truck, Sabrina told him she would require a large payment from him, or she would disclose that he had hurt her. Headley was taken aback by this news and realized that trouble was ahead. The subsequent occurrences were really terrifying. Though the seriousness of the situation weighed hard on him, Headley made the decision to leave Sabrina behind and drive away. He felt that he had to prevent her from ruining his life. At this time, he attacked her outside the truck with great violence. He carried her into a little graveyard that was concealed from onlookers' gaze in a startling and gory act. The account of the actual slaughter is really frightening. Headley admitted to severing Sabrina's neck with a Rambo-style knife that had a compass attached at the end. He gave a vivid account of how he snapped the bone and removed her head from her body by hammering on the knife blade with a rock. He said that his goal was to make sure Sabrina never found out what had happened to her. After doing this horrific deed, Headley hid Sabrina's body from sight by covering it with logs and foliage. Then he collected her possessions and put them close to her body. The knife and rock used in the horrific act were thrown into a stretch of woods many miles distant. Headley took off his blood-stained clothes at his mountain home apartment, threw them in a garbage bag, and showered to rid himself of Sabrina's blood. His garments were in the garbage bag that was thrown in the dumpster behind the mall. Headley then walked out of the place. In addition to sending shockwaves across Huntsville, Headley's confession gave Sabrina's family, who had suffered through decades of suffering and uncertainty, some degree of comfort and closure. A much-needed turning point in the pursuit of justice in the unsolved Sabrina Lynn Underwood case has been reached with the apprehension of Rick Allen Headley. He is currently being charged in relation to Sabrina's case, and the community is eagerly awaiting his anticipated court appearance in Fulton County Circuit Court in late November 2023. The case serves as a sobering reminder of both the small-town community's unwavering spirit and the police enforcement's unwavering loyalty. Moving on to the next case.